Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 3, 2013 City Council meeting. First order of business is the roll call. Heidi?
Sasso. Clayton. Nordstrom. Scott. Peterson. Doyle. Lewis. Roberts. Wright. Laurenti. We have a quorum.
Okay. And now we will have our invocation from Dr. Richard Wells from John Witherspoon College. You are welcome to join us, but not required.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. It's a privilege to pray. Almighty God, it is a great privilege to pray, and I give you thanks for that today. You have told us in your word, O God, that you are the giver of every good and perfect gift, and you have taught us to be grateful. We are grateful, Father. We thank you for this good land. We thank you for the freedoms that we enjoy, which are the envy of the world. We pray for wisdom to preserve those freedoms. We thank you for this good place that we get to call home. We thank you for this region and this city. We thank you for our mayor and city council and other leaders of our city, support staff and others who work so very hard to make this place a good place. And we recognize, Lord, that we are the recipients of these good things and that you are the giver of them. You've taught us in your word, O God, to seek the good of the place where we live. Even your people in exile were instructed to seek the good of that place. And we desire tonight the good of this place, and we pray for it, O Father. You taught us also to pray for kings and those in authority, that they may have wisdom to do what is right. And we pray that for these men and women here tonight. We pray for discernment as they deliberate issues of moment. We pray for wisdom to know what is the right course of action in every particular case. And above all, we pray for the courage to do what is right, for the good of this place. And for all this, we give you thanks and praise in the name of your Son. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. Thank you, Dr. Wells. We will now proceed with the adoption of the agenda. Pauline, I understand we have an item to add. Go to our Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have an item. It's an addendum was sent out earlier today for to acknowledge the report on the recall petitions in regards to Alderman Clayton.
Okay. Wait a minute. Where would you like that placed on the agenda?
The addendum said 1A, but I would really like it under staff items.
Okay.
That would be the more appropriate place.
That would be fine. And where would that be at? Okay.
It would be 150A.
150A. I don't think the agenda will be very long tonight, so we'll probably get there fairly quickly. So 150A. 150A. And the wording of that one more time, please.
To acknowledge the report on the recall petitions in regards to Alderman Clayton.
Okay. Any other items to add to the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve is adopted.
Okay.
Amended.
Motion by Peterson, second by Roberts to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now proceed with our Citizen of the Month, and if Jim Phoenix and the Ward 1 council members could join me down front. to our meeting tonight, and we want to thank you for joining us and thank you for your service to our community. I see you over at the Journey Museum, and you've been involved in our community for a long time in many ways, and we want to thank you for that. And we'll start off with Charity Doyle, our Council Vice President, who nominated you for this award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The June 2013 City of Rapid City Citizen of the Month is an individual whose second career has been public service to the community. We are pleased to present this award to Jim Phoenix. Jim graduated from Sturgis High School in 1952. Upon graduation, he joined the U.S. Armed Forces and served our country from 1952 through 55. James went back to school and earned his BS degree from the South Dakota State University in 1965 and his graduate degree from the University of Minnesota in 1970. James retired from the University of California in 2000 and made his way back to Rapid City shortly after. James has been actively involved in community service in and around Rapid City. From 2001 through 2006, he volunteered at the YMCA Fly Fishing Youth Program. He also spends much of his time volunteering at the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks Fly Fishing Program and the Journey Museum as a handyman. James also volunteers at Project Healing Waters, where he teaches returning veterans in Hot Springs and Fort Meade how to build fishing rods and tie flies. He also leads fishing outings in Rapid City and Ellsworth Air Force Base. Jim has attempted to better the community by helping to respond to the needs of youth and the returning veterans. Thank you, Jim, for your dedication to the City of Rapid City. We are proud that you're a member of our community and prouder that you're a member of our ward.
Thank you. Executive Proclamation. Whereas the City of Rapid City has established the Citizen of the Month Award to an individual whose second career has been public service to the community, and whereas the June Citizen of the Month is awarded to James Phoenix, a resident of Rapid City, and whereas James' dedication to the youth of Rapid City and returning veterans shows the generous donation of time he's given to better the community, and whereas James' commitment to help others shows true passion to the Rapid City community. Now therefore we, Alderwoman Charity Doyle and Alderman Bill Clayton of Rapid City, South Dakota, on behalf of Sam Quaker, Mayor of Rapid City, South Dakota, do hereby proclaim James Phoenix as the June 2013 Citizen of the Month recipient in recognition of his innovation and leadership and the many contributions he has made to our community.
Thank you. You can be seated. I thought maybe this would get me a cup of coffee, but it hasn't so far. No, I'm really passionate about working here in Rapid City. It's fun to be back to an old homestead, living in Sturgis, putting up with people. But my two passions right now are, of course, the Journey Museum, and I think we're really fortunate to have a facility like that. I know there's a few what do you call them? Soul searching? No, well, anyway, few people that don't really believe in the program itself, and I think you've got a beautiful community here with a facility you just can't throw away. I work down there, probably put in 600-700 hours a year down there, but my other passion, and really a passion right now, is helping the vets coming back from overseas. We've got a program, and I'm talking about we as a team. We've got a program at Hot Springs. We've been doing there for 5 years. We've got a brand new program at Fort Meade, and hopefully have one here at Ellsworth this fall. So with that, we're always looking for volunteers in our programs. We're not looking for money. We're just looking for volunteers that are really happy about doing some work, and be more than happy to oblige you, and I'm sure Sam will do the same thing. So thank you, folks, for everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by a unanimous vote of the council members present. We will first go to Jesse Gilliam, who would like to speak on uranium mining.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name's Jesse Gillum, and I'm a new resident here in Rapid City. I've been in Rapid City for less than a year. I came up here for business, and I'd like to talk a little bit about being in opposition of the upcoming uranium mining. I guess what makes this an interest of mine is we had a similar experience in a town close to mine in Texas, a little place called Kings Ranch. Kings Ranch is it's mostly known as a farming and a ranching town. However, there's a lot of tourism there. Quite a bit of hunting is done down there, a lot of fishing also. And I would take yearly trips to this place. And anyways, cut this short. At one point, there was a lot of mining done in Kings Ranch. And now, in a lot of places, it's no longer viable as a place for tourism. We no longer go there. My family has gone there every year for quite a while. Being a new resident here in South Dakota and having a business here, I definitely wouldn't like that to happen here in my new home. What else? Another thing that comes to mind with this, when I first came to South Dakota, I was almost sold a house. The house was in Edgemont, and the house was not suitable for living in. And somebody unscrupulously almost tried to sell me this home. And this was due to the tailings of previous uranium mining. So really that's just my take. I just wanted to come in today and to mention, that I stand in opposition of it. Not because of fear that in situ mining is unsafe, in that I don't want to stake my own personal family, my business, on whether or not some incident may occur that will occur or possibly have some larger effect on the Black Hills. So that was it.
Thank you, Jesse. And we'll now go to Susan Nolan.
Mayor and esteemed members of the City Council, this is the first time that I've had the privilege to stand before you, and I want to thank you for your leadership in our community. I've come to talk about something that connects us all, and that's water. If you remember from your biology science class, our bodies are about 70% water. Our planet is about 70% water. And so water is a very critical piece of how we sustain our lives. And I want to talk about water and the amount that will be used to mine uranium in the southwestern part of our state. In the Dewey Burdock area. First of all, this comes as no new information to any of you. We are a state that makes our living on agriculture and tourism. Those are industries that cannot support themselves without water. Clean water. Ranchers down in that area water their cattle and grow their crops with water. People enjoy our community and our part of the state because of the water. There's a lot of people here who come to fish, to kayak, to boat in Angostura. So clean water is a very, very critical factor in our economy. PowerTech is a Canadian company that seeks the first ever in situ mining permit in the state of South Dakota. This company, with no prior track record, proposes taking vast amounts of water out of the aquifer, mixing it with chemicals like arsenic, radon, and other radioactive materials to extract uranium. In fact, PowerTech wants to take 551 million gallons of water a minute from the Madison Aquifer and 8,500 gallons of water a minute from the Indian Kara Formation. That comes up to 12, let's call it 13, it's 12.9 million gallons per day for 20 years. How much are they going to pay for this water? Nothing. Zero. Zero. None of us in this room get our water for free. The most precious resource we have. And we're giving it to PowerTech for what could be an enormous profit for them. So I'm asking you, you're not going to be the ones making the decision on uranium mining. That will come through the permits and the permit procedure. But I'm asking you to educate yourself, inform yourself. This could say, people could say this is a great economic boon. There is a dark underbelly to this whole issue. And so I've come with information sheets that I'd like to pass out to you. Rapid City could become a leader in saying no to this intrusive, invasive issue in our community and in our state. I hope that you will educate yourself on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And we'll now go to Ed Randazzo.
Ed Randazzo, resident of Ward 2. Mayor Quaker, members of the Rapid City Council, I rise this evening to address the hubris of some members of this council in the matter of Alderman Bill Clayton. On December 20, 2012, Alderman Clayton shared with you all the facts and the words that were exchanged during his telephone conversation with Ms. Walker on August 29th of 2012. I was present at that meeting when you returned from executive session and we were advised, and I quote, "Due process was followed and no further action is necessary," unquote. We were further advised that this decision by 8 members of this council was unanimous. To date, none of you have come forward to explain an apparent complete reversal of your vote, but some of you likely violated the same code of conduct that you wielded like a weapon against Alderman Clayton to discuss this matter on the record with the Rapid City Journal. Despite your recorded vote, it is obvious that some of you have determined to use this incident to launch a campaign of character assassination against Alderman Clayton. Reminiscent of the shameful censure of Mayor Quaker, some of you have sought political advantage as well. Some of you publicly talk and write of the lack of civility and respect at City Hall. But your pontifications ring hollow when your actions reveal your intent to use this incident to alter the political landscape of this council. Clearly, this has become a political lynching to influence the outcome of votes taken by this council. Anger and resentment over decisions about term limits, the CPI veto, and others have motivated some of you to seek political revenge. Like petulant children, some of you seized this incident as an opportunity to prosecute Alderman Clayton in the press for self-serving political gain. I remind you that all of you were elected to serve the people of your respective wards, not to rule, form public opinion, or conspire to gain political advantage. Thank you.
We'll now go to Ian Roberson. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, for having me. My name is Ian Roberson. I live in Rapid City, Ward 1. I'm here again to talk about racism. I was certain to establish this last time when I addressed you about Alderman Clayton and racism. Perhaps I didn't speak loudly enough to be heard, as the Rapid City Journal had nothing to say about my comments. As I said on May 20th, as a black man, I think it is reasonable to claim that I would recognize racism if it existed. Let me give you an example I think anyone would recognize to be racist. I quote, "Could you imagine what a white Al Sharpton would look like? Man, that would be one nappy-headed cracker." Anyone who doesn't recognize that statement as blatantly racist is brain dead. I hope everyone who heard what I just said is as offended as I am. As that passage came from a book entitled Political Prostitution, written by Council Vice President Charity Doyle. No doubt Alderman Doyle has aspirations of another leadership position in the coming year, perhaps Council President this time. 6 of you would chastise my friend, Alderman Bill Clayton, who doesn't have a racist bone in his body. You have spent 8 long months weaving a web of lies and political spin, even after voting to take no action against him in the executive sessions on December 2012. After you consider his testimony, you have done an about-face on your own vote with no explanation and then asked for his resignation when you know the truth of what was said in a telephone conversation in August of 2012. Do you think no one in Rapid City can see through your smokescreen of deception? There are a multitude of yellow flags marking controversial, hateful, bigoted, and yes, racial passages in this book. Excuse me. You openly support a racist who has written a book to validate her feelings while prosecuting Bill Clayton for something he never said. You can try all you like to assign accuracy to the claims of Taisha Walker, but your claims pale in light of Joel Landine's comments in his investigation report. Again, I quote, "There is a discrepancy between her email and the interview with Alderman Clayton. My skin color might make me a minority in your eyes, but know this, I am one of the majority who will not be fooled by your deception and wholeheartedly support Bill Clayton." Thank you.
Okay, we do not have any further general public comment items. Did I miss anyone? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment for items 2 through 42. We have a motion to open public comment, please. We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Roberts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now into public comment period for items 2 through 42. I do have 2 speaker request forms for item 17. Now would be the time to make your statement. So Tim Goodwin, would you like to make a statement on item 17?
We just wanted to be sure that if there was any questions, we were here.
Okay.
That was a primary
Right.
objective.
We do not have any other speaker request forms for items 2 through, yes, we do. Item 41, Wade Lampert.
Yes.
On item 41.
They come up now, Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I'm Wade Lampert with the Hotel Alex Johnson, and I just wanted to talk about the parking up in the garage. I saw that we approved the increase, which I appreciate you changing it from $10 increase to $3. But with that, I was hoping as a business leader here in town and having the largest number of parking spots, that we could get some consideration for after 4 p.m. parking. The hotel guests usually check in after 4 o'clock, especially in the summertime, and all that parking is free. However, I pay for 78 or 79 spots. I'm not quite sure, Pauline, how many I have, but there's quite a few of them. But I'm never guaranteed even one spot, especially after 4 o'clock. So I just wanted to see if the council could see it possible to put some parking signs for Hotel Alex Johnson's guests for after 4 p.m. And if anybody has any questions,
In the city-owned lot.
the city-owned lot, yes.
All right, we'll discuss that further when we get to that item. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. Any further speaker request forms on items 2 through 42? Seeing none, do we have a motion to close public comment? Motion by Scott, second by Roberts. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on the consent items 2 through 42. Would any council members like to remove for separate consideration? Chad Lewis.
Item number 41, please.
Item 41. Jerry Wright. 17. Bonnie Peterson.
That was mine.
Okay. Anybody else? Do we have a motion to approve items 2 through 42 except for 17 and 41? Motion by Peterson, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on item 17. Jerry, would you read this in the agenda for us?
Item 17 is to authorize the city staff to send the required notice to the State Historical Preservation Office, Office of History, approving the applicants, that being Stephanie King, project proposal for the retrofit replacement of 6 double-hung windows, the replacement of 3 storm glass windows, and the replacement of the patio door of 923 Fulton Street, as all prudent and feasible alternatives have been considered. And I make a motion to reconsider the motion from Public Works. I can. The motion was to approve, and I want more discussion on it prior to a motion being approved. Is that how, I don't know how you want to do that.
Well, we don't have a motion, so go ahead and offer one.
Just don't make a motion, we'll have discussion.
I'll have a discussion, then we'll have a motion. I think that's okay. I'll open up for discussion.
Okay.
Yield the floor.
We currently do not have a motion. We'll go to Chad Lewis. Chad?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Laurenti to approve the item as listed.
Is the applicant here?
Right there.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Do you have anything can you please give me your side of the story, I guess?
If you could identify yourself.
Homeowner. I'm the homeowner. I'm trying to ensure that I retain the architectural features and appointments of the house. It's why I bought the house. They are not replacement windows. They are retrofit. A replacement window means you can change the size, the aperture. Or if retrofit, everything is as the architect or it was first built. That's what I'm doing. The 2 windows upstairs do not have sashes. They have pins in them that I have to try to line up. My dining room windows are painted shut from, I want to say, well, at least maybe Harding's administration. Those things have never seen outside. I have leaded glass mullioned windows that are so fragile at this point, I am trying to protect them with a reinforced dead pane storm. Now that, because the way the house is settling right now, I'm getting very interesting cracks. It's settling, and the wooden window that was a replacement when I bought the house would not stay open, and it would not lock. It had warped horrifically. This is the best bet for me. I have used these windows before. I replaced 27 windows in my house in New York. I replaced, when I moved to another house in Armonk, for 17 years those windows were fine. The 4 wooden ones I put in my family room in Armonk warped out and never stayed open. So I'm staying within the design and the architectural intent of the house. I'm not putting up shutters or anything odd, just a retrofit.
And then my understanding is this building will remain as a contributing structure after you're done?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions. I have no problem approving this. Thank you.
Stephanie, for the benefit of the minutes, would you state your name for the record,
I'm
please?
sorry, Stephanie King, and I live at 923 Fulton Street.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll go to Jerry Wright. Jerry?
Well, I'm not trying to mess things up, but I did some research, and I keep hearing the word vinyl, and we're talking about a historic structure with wooden windows, and I'm curious why vinyl when wood could be put in, and I went today to Connex, and I priced windows. I didn't get into the particulars of your windows, because I didn't have that, and I found out that the wood only or the vinyl only prices were approximately the same.
They don't wear the same, sir.
Pardon?
They don't wear the same.
I didn't say that, but I mean,
That-
just
yeah.
when you're talking about historic preservation, and this is an item that I've wrestled with for the last year and a half, 2 years, to be fair to the owners, but also to the district. But often we hear that, well, it costs way too much money to go to wood, and I found out today that's not true.
It costs too much because you have to replace them sooner. That's the problem. I can't be replacing them every 4 to 5 years. I just can't.
Okay, and I heard different from the window salesman, I'm sorry, but I'm just wrestling with this issue myself, and I...
That's fair.
And also the historic group and the state, I understand, said no, that this should not be done because it would take it out of the historic...
State said
compliance.
retrofit is acceptable, and the vinyl is a generic term. It's like the word Kleenex. Even though you buy Puffs Plus, you call them Kleenex. Vinyl has a bad name because of the way it was the amount of plastic it was. It made it brittle and cheesy and cheap. They don't do that anymore. It's PVC now. It has enough give so that as the house settles, they don't warp out. That's why I went with them. As I said, the house in Armonk, 17 years. Not a problem. The 4 wooden ones I put in my family room warped out and would not work. They did not last 17 years. The one in White Plains, 30 years. Not a problem. And that was 27 windows. And you couldn't tell from the outside. Right now, when we presented this originally, and they saw the picture of my house, they saw where 2 of the windows had already been replaced. They said, boy, those windows look nice. They didn't know that they were vinyl clad, what they call vinyl clad. It looks as if it's always been there. And that is my objective. I do not want an aberration. I want it to look and conform to the architect's original design.
Okay. Thank you.
You're more than welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim, can I ask you a few questions? Since you're probably the only window expert we have in the room.
Myself and Jerry Wright.
Wait a minute. I didn't say I was a window expert. I said I talked to the window expert at Connex.
Third person then. Okay.
So the record reflects.
Got it.
No cheap shots. Thank you.
It wasn't a cheap shot.
What's the life expectancy of the window like this, Tim?
Well, there's some of them that have a lifetime. Of course, anytime you see a lifetime warranty, there are some, depreciating factors to it. But there's the window that she's putting in has, for the present homeowner, a 50-year warranty. So 50 years.
And what would you say, with your professional opinion, a wood window would?
Well, the problem with wood, and nobody's talking about energy efficiency either, but wood does the exact opposite of what you want it to do. It expands and fits tightly in the summertime, and it contracts and fits loosely in the wintertime. And so it's not energy efficient. It takes maintenance. It has to be painted. And the life expectancy is much less. And the energy value is much less. And if you look at this house, Junie Kurtzloff at the Historical Society meeting said she wants to look at that house, and she pointed at what was on the overhead, and the 2 windows she pointed at were already retrofitted vinyl windows. You can't tell a difference. The only way you would know is if you trespassed on her property and walked up to the window and you knocked on the actual little small frame that's existing, because the brick mold is still wood, that you could maybe debate and say, is that vinyl or is that wood? I could maybe tell. Most people couldn't. The look is the exact same.
Thank you very much, Tim. That's all me.
Bill Clayton. Any further discussion on the motion? Jerry Wright.
One question. Just for the record, in the note here from our staff, it says, on May 13th, the State Historic Preservation agreed and found that the vinyl would be an adverse effect while the use of wood would not. That's the way it's written in this memo. Thank you.
Ron Sasso.
I have to say, we've had a few issues come up like this, and this is one that I know, at least I look at it slightly differently, and one of the big things is that the home will still be contributing. We've had others where we've made the decision and the home is losing its contributing nature, which to me is a major concern. I do believe that we, as a council, need additional training on historic preservation and the laws specific to them. And this is exactly one of those cases where I believe we're dealing with a little more gray area. So, thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I've received a lot of information here just at the 11th hour, maybe even the 12th hour. I'd like to have an opportunity to read this over and to digest what some of the information that's been presented. And I understand that, Tim, I'll call you back up again. I've got another question for you. During Public Works, you made a comment that my windows are vinyl clad, which is true, correct?
You have a vinyl, it's actually a pure vinyl window, it's not vinyl clad. Clad means it's over top of another material, so it's actually better than that, yes.
Does that make my home historic?
You're not in the historical district, Richie.
But it would qualify then?
Yeah, it's still contributing. That's the issue here, is contributing, not contributing. It still would be contributing, yes.
Thank you. I think that's the important significance for me, is
Yeah.
that it would be contributing.
Correct.
But, Tim, we've got a larger problem, and I need to address this to the rest of the council. We've got a larger problem that we're not looking at. We're not fixing the problem that I'm seeing. I'm not comfortable with the vote that I'm going to be making, but I've got to make the vote the way I see that needs to be done.
Correct.
Because we have a larger problem, and I'm just not comfortable with the vote that I'm going to be making on this. And so.
Well,
thank you,
and I'm
Tim.
not trying to out anybody else out, but there's a doctor's house right on West Boulevard that just decided to put vinyl windows in, never went through anything, and that's what's happening there. People are just doing it. I mean, and so we're trying to meet all the criteria and try to work with everybody and do it, nothing behind the scenes or at the midnight hour or anything like that. We want to meet all the criteria of the Historical Society. We think it's a good move, but we just want to have the latitude to put in a new material, because a lot of times the old material isn't even available anymore. But we want to keep the same look, and I think that's the intent, to keep it the historical look, but you still can use modern materials.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Still coming back to the larger issue, I think we've got a problem that needs to be fixed, and right now we're working with a lot of gray area, and that's not in my comfort zone. So hopefully that the staff will follow through with some suggestions that we've made to be able to come up with, I'll call it training for us. The other part of this, the whole thing, is that I just received a bunch of information and I haven't had a chance to really vet this information, so I'm just not comfortable with where I'm at right now. Thank you, Mayor. I yield the floor.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'm just going to start with directing this question to you because I really am a very new novice on the Historic Preservation Society. Can you explain just a little bit about how this process goes? Because it appears that this house was denied on the local and the state level, or the state affirmed the local level's decision to deny doing this replacement. But the information that's being provided to the council keeps talking about these windows that are conforming or would not remove the property from being conforming for the historic preservation. And I agree with Alderman Nordstrom. It seems like the process is broken here. It seems like, you know, especially if we have residents that are in the historic preservation and they're not getting building permits, they're not going through the committee, the whole process here just seems to be broken. So I know you've got quite a bit of experience, Mayor, on the council, and do we take this to the state, or is this state directed? Is this locally directed? Where would we go to start trying to unbreak this process? Do you know, or should we turn it over or get more information?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer part of the question to Brett Limbaugh in just a moment, but I will answer the part of the question that you asked, and that is if when I look at item 17 and I translate it into plain English, what it means is that the City Council is being asked to overturn the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission, and every applicant has a right to come to the council and ask for that. The Historic Preservation Board is not a final decision-making authority. So, Brett, would you walk us through the process briefly and how we got to where we're at today.
Yeah, that's correct. We do have a local, and then there is a state board that both do a review on this, and they will make a recommendation on whether, you should approve or deny it. And then the appeal comes to council. So what you've got in front of you tonight, and in particular, I think Catherine did a great job of putting together her memorandum summarizing what the state's finding was. You are the final say, the final authority on this.
So, I'm sorry, Mayor, may I continue to ask Mr. Limbaugh some questions? Thank you. So, Brett, on this, if homeowners in the Historic Preservation District decide not to apply to the Historic Preservation Committee or take out a building permit or even check to see, I'm taking it there's no punitive actions against them. It's their property. They can pretty much do whatever they want to?
Yeah, if they're required to get a permit, then they are in violation of building code. So there are fines that can be assessed. We have to catch them.
You have to catch them. And you wouldn't know. I mean, your office is very busy.
Yeah, usually what will happen is a neighbor would call us and say that they're concerned about something going on across the street and whether or not that person has a building permit, in which case then we'll send an inspector out. But normally our inspectors are going to inspections that have been scheduled. That is, someone who's called in and asked for one.
So I'm just throwing this out for my learning curve here. It's basically those properties within the Historic Preservation District itself that need to police themselves as far as their neighbors making adjustments or making improvements or switching things out?
That's not a bad way to put it. I think, an active district will self-police.
All right, thank you. Just final comments. Being a novice, I'm kind of sitting in the same seat that I understood Alderman Nordstrom to say, and that's seems to be like conflicting material here. I know that I've been speaking, but I wouldn't mind putting this back to Public Works for further consideration to see if we can get some clarification, but I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just say that the state says that it won't change, that it'll still be contributing, but the problem that occurs is you have a cumulative effect. So say perhaps the next thing that happens to that house would cause it to be non-contributing. So it's like what you do now plus something else could turn it into non-contributing. But they can't identify exactly what those things are. And Ms. King has done a wonderful job supporting her case and her history with vinyl windows, and so it's hard to not support her in this cause. But I'm going to support our local commission because it seems like we never support them when they come up here. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know apparently this isn't working, but that's all right. I usually speak loud enough. But the last time we had this issue, and it was on another applicant that was looking for an exception, or should we say she appealed it, and we awarded that. I think part of the problem we have is that some of the information we were given the last time, the National Historic Preservation said it was very fitting that retrofitting was exactly what they expected homeowners to do in these historic districts. And that's the part that I'm struggling with, is that we have our local and state who seem to be at odds with the National Historic Preservation, and the information we had was quite extensive about retrofitting, and that the integrity of the building, the look, as the applicant has said, was the primary and the key to keeping it in the historic district. So I'm struggling with the fact that we're getting something different, especially when that information was presented to us at the time that we had our local historic preservation here, but they didn't speak much to it. And maybe I probably should have taken them to task on that issue a little bit more, but I feel very comfortable in approving this, knowing that the exterior presentation of the home is what it should be, and all of the information that I read on the National Historic Preservation and the efforts that they put forth to talk about how retrofitting is exactly what they expect residents to do, because they need that efficiency, because windows from 100 years ago just don't have the ability to insulate, and they didn't have the ability to construct windows the way we do today. And so I'm very comfortable with the fact that there's no way you could tell, except if you were to walk up on her yard. I wouldn't do that, but and knock on the window to see if it's vinyl or wood. And so I'm very comfortable with approving this, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ron Sasso.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things. One, on the Historic Preservation Trust, there's also on that information, there is a disclaimer on that it is not actually, it's not specific for preservation. There's a marketing aspect to it. So I think there's some questions regarding that piece of literature as well. And that's where I think there's a lot more for us as a council to learn about this. And I think this situation, and I guess this is, I personally, I'm struggling with this too. On the one hand, this situation is very different from the previous situation that we dealt with, which went through. In this case, I think we are looking at the home is still contributing, and that's probably one of the bigger things. Where we get into the situation from historic preservation, once a home is not contributing, then anything can be done to that home. And as Alderwoman Peterson pointed out, there's also a point at which that scale tips and suddenly one more thing and the home is no longer contributing. So these are all factors that I think we all need to struggle with. So and it would be nice if everything was nice and clear cut, but this one isn't. But at the same time, I believe this one, at least the intent and on the whole, is a little more palatable. If we had a home rule charter here, we would probably be able to alter the landscape a little bit. But right now, we have to fit our state preservation, so that it fits with the state, fits with the small towns that are in the eastern side of the state. And those are some of the other challenges that we have. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Bill Clayton. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just heard the logic that we should vote against this because it seems we never support our local Historic Preservation Society. It's interesting that, as Stephanie pointed out, number one, there are 2 windows that have already been replaced with vinyl. And our own Historic Preservation Society liked those windows, it seems, until they learned that those windows were vinyl, and that further retrofits would also be vinyl. We are not in a position to force Stephanie, if we could force her at this point to not install vinyl, but instead to install wood, we certainly would not be in a position to force her to remove the existing 2 vinyl windows and turn them to wood as well. So what we've got is a uniform look throughout the house that can't be ascertained unless, as Tim pointed out, you walk up and literally knock on the material in an effort to figure it out. And I guess for me, again, I'm certainly no expert, but I don't understand why when something from the street looks the same with something new as it did 100 years ago, why there is such a fuss over the material. It's about the appearance. And for the owner, it's about the function, because the function allows the windows to operate as a window to keep the elements out or allow the elements in if it's your desire. And as Tim said, when you use wood, it works absolutely backwards in terms of its expansion and contraction characteristics. So it seems like we're penalizing homeowners just on semantics, and that is just not right. Thank you.
Very right.
Just an item I want to share from my window expert that I talked to today, not me, is that the wood window versus the vinyl, the windows that are being used and produced by the manufacturing companies are not producing these single pane windows we're talking about that were built in 1890. The windows they're constructing today for retrofit are thermal pane. They're not, and I think this is one of those boogeymen that keeps brought in to throw a curve at us. The new windows that are being constructed are thermal pane, I understand. So they're energy efficient. The question is, in my opinion, do we require wood because wood was here in 1890 and PVC was not? Is that not kind of the question? I think that's it. And I don't have an answer. I really don't.
Well, the original roofs on the houses in 1911 were wood.
If we can,
Do you allow me?
Stephanie, if you want to speak. Jerry, do you have a question?
I apologize.
Stephanie?
The original roofs on the
Ma'am,
houses were wood.
Jerry, you still have the floor, so if you want to direct a question.
That's
to her.
fine.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
made my point on
He's
the
not
windows.
acknowledging me, that's the only reason. They were made of wood. Why do we allow asphalt? The original roofs were wood. Why do we allow asphalt roofs to go up now? Because of fire and as a retardant. But if you were true, you would never allow it. It's as time, if those things were so good, we would still be using them right now. But we make improvements. We move forward, and we're able to retain all the architectural heritage, the intent, and make it last longer. And that's something I like. I don't want to live in a module house that cookie cutter like everybody else. I retain these things. The inside of my house looks as, well, somebody took out this dividing wall in the living room and dining room. I didn't do it. I would have left it up, but I've done everything I can to retain the inside as well as the outside. Down to the stained glass, down to the heat registers, down to everything else, every other aspect to make, and if I do an improvement within the house, I keep within the architectural features. But right now, I am being penalized because I want to make my house more efficient. I want to keep the look in place because I'm not going to use wood. And I like windows that function. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
If I just may, because thank you, Stephanie. I just want to also echo the comments of several council members, the need for training for this group and whoever's involved, because this is absolutely, in a little way, a mini nightmare of trying to do what's right, because we don't have the answers. We're not the experts. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
We'll go to Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call the question, please.
Question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Any objection? Okay, we will proceed to the vote. Everyone understands the motion? Okay. The motion is to authorize city staff to send the required notice to the State Historic Preservation Office, Office of History, approving the applicant's project proposal for the retrofit replacement of 6 double-hung windows, the replacement of 3 storm glass windows, and the replacement of the patio door of 923 Fulton, as all prudent and feasible alternatives have been considered. Okay, we're going to proceed to the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call, please.
Nordstrom.
No.
Scott. No. Peterson. Doyle. Lewis. Roberts. Wright. Laurenti. Sasso. Clayton. Motion passes 3-7, 7-3.
Okay, very good. We'll now move on to item number 41. Amanda, can you read this in the record for us?
Approve resolution number 2013-004 to increase the rates for leased parking in city-owned parking lots. I make a motion to approve and like to retain the floor.
We have a motion by Scott and a second by Lewis to approve. Amanda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to address my question to Pauline Sumption, please.
Go ahead.
And Pauline, I know I asked you at the Legal and Finance meeting to give a rough or a very, very brief outline of what the rates are going to be. If you wouldn't mind humoring us again and giving it so that it's on the record and the people know that it's coming. We did take this issue And we turned it back over to staff, and personally speaking, I think staff came back with a very good rate schedule and considered all the things that we asked staff to consider at the time. So thank you, Pauline, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you. The first year, effective January 1 of 2014, it would be a $3 per month increase. For the next 4 years after that, again effective January 1 of each of those years, it would be increased by 3% or CPI, whichever is greater, rounded up to the nearest dollar. And I figured those rough maximums out for the newspaper, and I think the $20 ones went to a maximum of 27, the $30 spots went to a maximum of 40, and the $40 spots went to a maximum of 51.
Thank you, Pauline, and thank you for your work on this. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Amanda. Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lampert, I have some questions for you, please, sir. Is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you. Sir, I'm trying to figure out a happy medium here for it, because obviously we can't reserve 78 or whatever number you pay for, but if we were somehow able to come up with a number like 20 spots after 4 o'clock or something like that, would that be something that might be amiable for you, or the more the merrier?
Yeah, the more the merrier. I mean, right now it's a challenge every summer night, especially on Thursdays, but every night in the summer when we get busy to find parking for our guests. We do valet parking, and we drive around blocks and blocks and blocks, and with the parking is free after 4, but at 8 o'clock you have to be out of those spots. And I don't know if you take vacations. I like to sleep in on mine, and I don't have to worry about getting up and moving my car at 7 o'clock in the morning. So that's why we do purchase those spots for our guests.
So if we could, maybe I can't make a motion now, but if we could somehow get some signs, would you be willing to pay to absorb that cost?
I would be more than happy to absorb that cost.
Okay, so basically I would like to see a motion from somebody maybe to reserve some spots, maybe say 40 or whatever, half, and with the stipulation that the applicant pays for the signage. Just out of, they're paying, I don't know, how much you pay a month, sir?
We'll be paying over $3,000 a month here once the fees. I think we're right around $2,900 right now.
Thank you.
We'll go to Pauline Sumption. Pauline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be able to change, we're after 4, there's still some reserved parking for those that hold a tag, whether it's the Hotel Alex Johnson or one of our other lessees. I believe it would require an ordinance change because it is quite specific in the ordinance what the hours are. Monday through Friday, I believe it's 6 to 4,
It's through Saturday.
Let's see. It has a 6 to 4 designated as leased, and 9 to 4 any day metered parking spaces, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays accepted. And so if you want to extend it for, again, the lessees, I would request that an ordinance amendment be brought forward. I would also, just because I realize that the Hotel Alex Johnson is our largest lessee, but we have other ones that would probably have some of those same concerns, that you perhaps open the 3rd floor to those permit holders as a whole, and still would allow for any permit holder not specific to the Hotel Alex Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Pauline. Is it still my floor? Okay. Also, sir, we talked something about you noticed some vandalism on a couple of vehicles that you had up there. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. I sent you an email concerning some of the things that have happened at the parking garages within this last month. One, windows being broken out, number of windows being broken out on a vehicle that was parked there with one of our tags. Another one was spray painted, and just early last week I had a concerned citizen, and I passed on his phone number, who was up there with his mother and was concerned about he called it drag racing up there with some of the high school kids and the loud music, and he knew we had a number of spots, and he stopped and voiced his concern, and I directed him to your office, Mayor. I gave him your phone number, but I also passed that number on to you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your concerns up there with that. I've experienced it with my children as well. There's a lot of, it's kids being stupid, but, maybe we can somehow, I don't know if much we can do about that, maybe install some cameras, but anyway, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Chad. Pauline, I'd like to go to you for just a moment. What would you think? This resolution involves the rates and the rates alone. So what would you think about you bringing forward an item back for discussion, review these other issues at either the next Legal and Finance or Public Works Committee meeting? You pick, it really fits either one, and you can lay out the pros and cons of making changes to the hours and the process. Would you be able to do that for next week's set of committee meetings, or 2 weeks after that?
Thank you, Mayor. I will actually not be available next week. I'll be at training. I think that this is more than a finance office issue. We also need to take into account the parking enforcement officers, as well as in the past we've also included Destination Rapid City and their thoughts as far as pros and cons. And so I would request maybe some time to put an email out to get some feelers from them instead of it just being my decision, I guess.
Would you mind putting it on an agenda, I would say within the next 30 to 45 days for an update? And if you still need more time, it can be continued. But I think this is something the council's interested in. I'm interested in discussing further.
That would be fine.
Okay? And is that okay with? I was hoping that would clear some lights, but it didn't. No, it cleared one. We'll go to Jerry Wright.
My window expert also had to ask a question about, I'm kidding. I remember the discussion a couple months ago about this, that I asked, and I understood there would be an evaluation of the total costs of our parking facilities, and to look at not only the bond issue, but the maintenance repair, like structural on the parking ramp and so forth. Where are we on that, to make sure that we're looking at our operating costs and so forth, besides the debt service?
Terry Walterstorff provided information for me as far as for maintenance, annual maintenance costs for all of our facilities, not just the ramp itself. We also realized as we were looking at these that the parking lot and area fund was being charged for services from other departments that they actually were not providing, and we contracted out, so that reduced our expenses somewhat. So with these increases, it will allow us to do some of the repairs and maintenance that we need to do on the structures in the different facilities. In addition, we're trying to work something out where we can use some of the cash already on hand to do a major upgrade. A lot of maintenance stuff that's been deferred on the ramp, we're hoping to be able to fund that here shortly. I need to look at those numbers yet and how to make that happen.
Good, thank you. And you're comfortable with that, with your rates, that we could do that?
Yes.
Okay. The other question on this issue related to security, can we include in this discussion possibly some type of a closed-circuit camera monitoring system, not monitored by a station, but maybe recording what's occurring, so if something does happen, we can go back and check the records? It's not terribly expensive, but I think it might help. Thank you.
Would you add that to your item when you bring it forward in 30 or 45 days also, please? Any further discussion on item 41? Everyone understands the motion. The motion is for approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on non-consent items. Can we have a motion to open public comment for items 43 through 150A? We have a motion by Scott and a second by Laurenti. Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now hearing public comment for items 43 through 150A. I do not have any speaker request forms. Am I missing anyone? Am I missing anyone? Last call? Okay. We have a motion to close public comment. Motion by Scott, second by Laurenti. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 43, Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance number 5939, an ordinance to change the calculation of the base sewer rate for residential users by amending subsections 13.16.360C of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve, and I'd like to retain the floor.
Motion by Scott, second by Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to make sure that the public is aware that the language was included, and it was confirmed by Mr. Wolsterstorff that the residents who are actually moving from one resident in Rapid City or within the sewer base rate. And if you move into another house within Rapid City, your history will be taken over into the new property until you can establish that, instead of having to resort back to or reset back to the average. So once this gets passed today, though, may I address a question to Mr. Wolsterstorff? Thank you, Mayor. Terry, again, same question I posed to you last week. Once this passes today, City Council, anybody that wants to actually have a review, because the department will look at any new changes of residence to consider historic information in setting their rate, but anybody prior to tonight's approval will have to actually come in and request that review, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion on item 43? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 44. Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance number 5937, an ordinance of the City of Rapid City to adopt a wayfinding program by amending Title 10 of the Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion by Scott and a second by Peterson to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Amanda.
Second reading, ordinance number 5924, an ordinance repealing section 17.50.340, gasoline service stations of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Scott, second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 46. Jerry.
Item 46, a request by Spurla Consulting Incorporated for Jake Borger for a preliminary subdivision plan for property generally described as being located on South of Philadelphia Street between North 11th Street and Founders Park, and I move to approve with stipulations.
We have a motion by Wright and a second by Nordstrom to approve with stipulations. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Bids. Pauline.
First item for bid is the pavement rehabilitation project for the Carriage Hills area. We received 2 proposals or bids on this. Recommendation is to award to Hills Materials Company in the amount of $217,976.50.
Motion by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is for the 2012-2013 ADA compliance project. We received 3 bids on this project. Recommendation is to award to Brewer Construction in the amount of $65,144.62.
Motion by Peterson, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is the Fairmont Boulevard Overlay Project. 3 bids were received. Recommendation is to award to Hills Materials Company in the amount of $356,796.75.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Peterson to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Number 50 for the high nitrate content hay bales. No bids were received, and so we will go out for bids again in late 2013, as long as you guys say it's okay.
We have a motion and a second to acknowledge, and that's fine as long as they don't sit there and start on fire.
That's up to Terry.
Okay, that's up to Terry. All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on alcohol beverage license applications, items 51 through 150. We're going to handle these all at once. Do we have any that need to be pulled for separate consideration? Pauline? No? We have a motion to approve. We have a motion by Laurenti, second by Scott. Any discussion on items 51 through 150? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 150A, Pauline.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, and thanks to the media, most of the public is aware, on Friday at about 4:30, the Finance Office received 467 petitions for the recall of Ward 1 Alderperson Bill Clayton. We reviewed those petitions this morning and determined that of those 467, 166 petitions in full were invalid in their entirety. The first reason is the state statute SDCL 12-3-19, petition circulator is required to be a resident of the state of South Dakota, age requirement of at least 18 years, and we had 2 of the circulators that listed their place of residence in Montana. So those were automatically determined invalid. In addition, we had entire petitions declared invalid because the circulation verification notary was incorrectly completed. So in some of those cases, the notary, in one in particular, the notary dated it May 6th. All the signatures on that petition were actually dated after that date. And so with the evidence presented, we had to discount those. So of the remaining 301 petitions, we had a total of 4,466 signatures, which is 1,706 signatures short of the 6,172 required signatures. So at this time, there will not be a recall election.
Motion by Laurenti and a second by Roberts to acknowledge. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Items 151 through 162. Can we have a motion to open public hearing? So moved. Motion by Scott, second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Items 151, and actually we have no discussion on any of these items. Public hearing will remain open at this time. We have a motion to continue 151 and 2 to June 17. Motion by Doyle, second by Lewis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to close public hearing. Motion by Doyle, second by Lewis. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now on items 153 through 162. Would anyone like to remove any of these items for separate consideration? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve all of these items? Motion by Lewis, second by Scott. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 163.
Thank you, Mayor. This morning I said that there were no additions to the bill list, except we had one come in today that we need to add to the bill list. Is for Wells Fargo Equipment Finance for principal and interest on our 2 sweepers in the amount of $87,648.48, bringing the new total to $6,444,714.35.
Motion by Roberts, second by Laurenti to approve with the new total. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to adjourn. Yes. Motion by Doyle and a second by Nordstrom. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 7:44 p.m. and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Good luck on your